Dark Souls Remastered is due out on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC pretty soon, May the 25th, guys.
That is soon.
Yeah, we've had some previews emerging online this week on Tuesday. Whoops, just banged my microphone. But that doesn't matter.
Smooth.
First impressions of the remaster, essentially. I mean, we all know what the game is. Dark Souls, one of the most important games of the 21st century, no question. But the remaster is kind of bringing it to the current gen and to Nintendo Switch significantly and the PC. So the game originally obviously first came out on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in 2011, so it has been a while. And there was the Prepare to Die edition, which followed a year later, and that brought it to PC as well. So this is a pretty major release. I think there was a lot of anticipation for this when they first kind of revealed it.
Sure.
But the first impressions of the, at least the graphical remaster bit, have been pretty mixed, I'd say, is the fairest way of putting it. And it's actually pretty damning with faint praise, in my opinion, and some of the time, because they're kind of highlighting things that aren't really that good in some of these previews. So we must say we haven't played the remaster. This is based on impressions that have come online, based on articles and videos and side-by-side comparisons and stuff that emerged on Tuesday this week. And we've trawled through a lot of that and seen what the comparisons are like. So the changes do seem pretty minor, at least in terms of the graphics early on.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the footage, and that's what we based our opinions on, it doesn't look like much of an upgrade. And if you consider things like lighting look a lot better in the original, how the lighting glistens, it looks really dull, the remaster. And if you're looking to invest in a remaster, if you've got the original or whatever, you want to feel like you're getting value for your money if you're buying another version of it, because I'm assuming the game's going to be $40-$50.
No, it's going to be, well, dollars wise, it's going to be kind of one of them sub tier. This price has kind of been set now because of the way Sony's been doing it. It's kind of like 27 quid here in the UK.
Yeah, so that's 30 odd.
So you've got to be that now because of how good quality the other games are, which we'll get on.
You've got to look at the value for money. That's my very first, my first thought in all of this, right? What am I getting for my money at this point? But and then you compare that remaster, what it looks like, the textures don't look upgraded at all.
Same textures, pretty much.
Yeah. But then you compare that to something like the Skyrim remaster, which came out at the same time, right? 2001. 11.
Yeah.
Same time, right? They remastered that last year, and that looks special compared to the original. It looks a miles different. All right, you might say, oh, they did this in mods years ago. That's a different proposition. That's a different conversation, right? We're talking about what they're offering, what they've done for their money in terms of the remaster. And compared with Skyrim, it sucks.
And of course the remakes and stuff that we've had as well, but we'll get onto all of that in a second. So here are some of the things that we do know for sure. So this is some information that either leaked or came out at the same time as all these previews of Dark Souls Remastered in action. Well, first of all, this wasn't a leak, but we know that it's the remaster is being conducted by a company called Virtuous for Nintendo Switch and Q-Lock for everything else, and it's been overseen by the original creators from Software. And that's quite a standard practice for remasters and remakes and stuff. It's not unusual for other companies to do it at all. It's probably the norm, if anything. So here are some details we know about it that have emerged online. It runs at 4K 60 FPS on PS4 Pro, Xbox One X and the PC. It's going to be upscaled on console and native on the PC. The base PS4 and Xbox One versions is going to be 1080p 60 FPS. On the Nintendo Switch, it's going to run at 1080p 30 FPS when it's docked and 720 30 FPS in handheld. And they've made some pretty big changes to multiplayer and matchmaking and actual functional stuff as well. So it's not just a graphical upgrade. You'd hope for quality of life improvements. They have done that. Pretty significant stuff to multiplayer, actually. The maximum number of multiplayer players is up from 4 to 6. Password matchmaking is available, a la Dark Souls 3. There's a lot of other small changes to PvP and matchmaking in general. And then in terms of just actual gameplay, you can use a number of consumable items at once instead of having to go through one by one like you originally had to do. So that's something that's come in the later games. So that's a natural, easy thing to implement.
Yeah, but that was the time it takes to do the animation or something. That was the
Yes, because it's literally, if you want to use a
That was the
consumable
annoyance.
item, it'll do it once, and you've got to go through that and then select it in the menu and do it again over and over
Yeah.
and over again. So they've
Right.
streamlined all that, which is how it's been in Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3.
Makes a lot of sense, that, yeah.
They've actually added one bonfire to the game world. There are more language options. There's a button configuration, which on console, I guess, is pretty rare to have. You don't often get the option to reconfigure your controller setup, so that's going to be there now. And they've added dedicated servers as well, which is pretty important. I mean, everybody would always prefer dedicated servers, I imagine, right?
Yeah, of course.
For multiplayer. So that's what they've functionally added, and that's stuff that we know for sure, pretty much. In terms of side-by-side comparisons, though, they're not hugely flattering, right? So as you've already kind of touched on there, what your impressions were. The PlayStation Access ran a side-by-side of the original PS3 version next to PS4 Pro. There's an obvious increase in resolution and frame rate, but the extent to which they had to like slow down the clips to show,
just to prove it,
it kind of, if you've got to look that hard, if you've got to slow down the video to show that the frame rate is better, then surely that's not.
Yeah, it should be convincing on its own merit rather than let's look at it a little bit more. It should be able to. I mean, to my eyes, it looks better. It looks like the higher frame rate when it's played at normal speed.
Sure.
But when you slow it down, it's kind of less. It's less convincing. If anything, it's like don't slow it down. Just show us the footage.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's
and PlayStation Access is a great channel. They do this a lot. They do a lot of this kind of video and preview stuff. And PS3 actually, in a lot of cases, genuinely looked better to my eyes. I thought it just honestly. They put the PlayStation 4 Pro and PlayStation 3 next to each other. PlayStation 3 just looked just better in some cases. I can't explain what it was, but just as a on a glance for glance kind of thing, it just looked better. And they obviously had to stretch the resolution to make it the same kind of space on the screen and things like that as the PlayStation 4 Pro version. But the comparison just wasn't immediately apparent which one was the best one.
And that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, like I said, if you're paying extra money for this, if you already have it on PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3 or whatever, you want to feel like there's a difference, there's a noticeable difference, and you're getting something for your money.
Yeah.
When you compare those screenshots, you don't know instantly which one's the best because they look so similar.
Yeah.
And in fact, like I said, the lighting looks a lot better on the original.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
it's kind of darker. It's definitely darker, and there's one thing they've just lit everything up like a Christmas tree in the remaster, and it seems like a deliberate decision. I guess that'll reveal more detail or something and make it a bit more vivid on your average TV screen, like. But it just, when you put it side by side, it just looks grungier and grittier and darker in the original, which is a subjective thing, totally a subjective thing. But
Light Souls, let's just call it Light Souls.
Well, there you go. So then another video that we had to look at quite closely was Vati Vidya, who's kind of a prominent Dark Souls, Bloodborne YouTube channel, and he had to look through some of the very detailed comparison of things like so here's some of the quotes that he said. The ivy is animated this time around. The fog gate is much more detailed. So these were things he was trying to point out that were good changes, but overall he did sound disappointed, and he did say at one point that he is disappointed. The one bright spot for him was that new players will get to play it, which is great. I mean, that is good. Yeah. It's great that new players will get to experience it, but that was kind of one of his. That was one of his biggest shining takeaways from it. And then one more big one, I guess, for you is Kotaku's Laura Kate Dale says in her impression piece that Dark Souls Remastered, this is a quote, Dark Souls Remastered definitely has an improved frame rate and resolution, but by gosh, some areas of the game are very aged. The pre-rendered cutscenes also look minimally updated at best. None of this is leaving a good impression of the remaster. Once you're into the actual game, things do improve, but perhaps the big problem here is exactly what expectations are set by calling this Dark Souls Remastered rather than, say, Dark Souls Polished Up. And this is kind of brings us on to the whole other topic of, a remaster versus a remake and everything, and what our expectations are like now. What does a remaster have to do to earn the name of a remaster?
And not just a polish up?
It's got to be it's got to be an obvious improvement, maybe?
It has to be, remastered, the word isn't there, master. Master is just such a powerful word, right? It's a remastered. It's a mastering, right? Making it the best that you can currently possibly do. That's what, in my eyes, what a remastering means, right? To be, can they get better textures than they've got in the remaster of Dark Souls? fucking yes. Them textures look shit.
Well,
they could tweak those lightings, make it more moody. It's just not a remaster. It is a polishing up, like I said. But polishing up doesn't make the headlines, right?
Yeah.
We've polished up this game. Try and play
Imagine it was called Dark Souls Polished Up.
Oh,
It gets so much respect.
Light Souls Polished Up.
I definitely would buy it. Have a name like that.
How about you though? I mean, what was?
Well, I was quite disappointed. I think I was expecting something a bit better, I suppose. But this is where it comes down to. It's expectation. And this is something that Vati Vidya said in his video as well, that he had like lofty expectations, and he called that kind of personal bias because of what he wanted. But I think I'm with him there. I just think I would maybe want it running on the Dark Souls 3 engine or something, and that's because of how good we've seen remakes and remasters being recently with Crash Insane Trilogy, with Wipeout Omega Collection, with Ratchet and Clank, with Shadow of the Colossus. They're just really, really good games that stand up on their own right today.
Yeah.
Whereas Dark Souls still looks like Dark Souls did, but polished up. I'm sure that a lot of people, a huge majority of people maybe even, would want a very close representation of what the original game was. If they want anything changed, they just wanted a better version. And I guess this is the safest way of doing it, literally just up-resing the original version.
You do say that. However, this raises the question of how true to the actual original should they have to go, right? Because this is the game remastered. Although they've added the extra element, they've added the extra multiplayer features, they've streamlined things for quality of life. It's not technically a remastering because they've made improvements, so they're not faithful. If people wanted that faithful recreation, they haven't got that essentially anyway. So even if you jump and say, oh, the textures are faithful, but you can't have it both ways, really.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to do it well, I think, and these remasters can really fall like one of two ways. They can really be underwhelming and just a kind of HD up-resing, or they can be a really faithful, loving remake, can be considered one of the best games of the year that they come out with. There's a really big scope here. I'll just read some more headlines for you of what the general impression has been, so you think that we're not just kind of making this up or something. VG247 says that they played Dark Souls Remastered and they weren't allowed into Blighttown, which is kind of famously one of the areas that the game just tanked in terms of frame rate originally. So they weren't allowed to go in there to test it, which is a bit of a concern. And then the same website otherwise called it a modest improvement, which again is kind of humble praise, I guess. PC Games N went a bit further. They said Dark Souls Remastered is a tough sell when we can just mod the original. And this is another thing we should point out: the Vati Vidya's side-by-side comparison. I'm pretty sure was running a modded version of it, which looked bloody lovely. It looked really good. This is a free mod that anyone on PC can download and install. So again, if it's called a remaster, you'd hope that it would exceed what a free community-made mod can do.
Of course, yeah.
And that's got to be some kind of baseline as well. There were a few positive takeaways though. Wired said that Dark Souls Remastered makes the grisliest undead layer look beautiful. Beautiful. That's probably the most positive headline I could find. And WCCF Tech says that the frame rate is solid in Blighttown. So I'm imagining that they either just snuck in there when a rep wasn't looking over their shoulder or something, or they were allowed in the same Blighttown area that VG247 weren't allowed in for whatever reason. So there is some positivity for sure. And we read off at the top of this video just some of the listed details of exactly what is changed. But do be aware before going into this that it is an incredibly faithful to the original, in that it is basically the original game, but kind of with some minor improvements, and it runs at 4K and 60 FPS, which is like a minimum of what you'd want, right? Yeah,
my takeaway from this would be that if you've never played the original, it's probably a good place to want to play it.
Yeah.
But however, if you've played the original and you're not sure about it, it's not maybe for you because it's so similar in graphic. If you're looking for that huge bump in graphics and a huge difference, you're just not going to get out of this. So that's maybe who they've pitched it towards, the people who haven't played it before.
Yeah, and I think one thing we should mention is the fact that it is a port as well. That I don't mean that in a negative kind of term, but it just means it's coming to platforms that it hasn't been on before. So it's the first time you can play it on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and Nintendo Switch, which is very important. It is available to those games on those platforms now. And maybe you did play it back in the day. Maybe you played it when it came out and haven't tested it since, and you really want to go back to it and revisit. This is going to be the best way to do it now. So it's just kind of a mixed reception. There is loads of conversation about this online. We do recommend you read, at a minimum, the Kotaku article. Check out the Vati video. There's loads of side-by-side comparisons and stuff. Just do your research before going into it. That's one thing I'd say. It's definitely worth reading and being informed about this. So that's Dark Souls Remastered, PC, PS4 and Xbox One release coming on May 25th on Nintendo Switch, of course. The changes are dramatically not at all dramatic. You've seen the comparisons, you've seen the videos that we would have put on top of this video, but like I said, go and check out what else is out there on the internet if you're thinking about picking this up. Just inform yourselves. Let us know what you think of the side-by-side comparisons down in the comments below. Remember to like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see most of this every single day. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.